Good evening, and thank you for tuning into Culture Shock here on Radio Korea. I'm your host, Michael Kim, filling in for Michael Won, and I'm joined by your regular host, Young Kim.
Do you know when he's coming back?
I don't know. Maybe next month.
Because he said a date, but he's not sure. He's like, I might stay longer.
Yeah, I mean...
Pretty free spirit
I think
there.
the longer the better, yeah.
Michael, we miss you. All right, so Michael Kim, our CEO, is joining us on Culture Shock tonight because today is going to be an English segment. It's going to be a rather interesting one.
Yeah, it's a return of I think this is the third appearance of this person. He's known as kind of a wild guy. He's known for his many Twitter battles. He likes to argue and fight, and he calls himself the Yellow Knight. He's the hero that the Asian American community needs, not the one that they want.
They deserve.
Not the one that we deserve.
Yeah.
And he's
a troll.
Also a childhood friend of Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, yes.
He's also a poker champion, right?
He was
seventh place.
World Series
Seventh
of Poker,
place.
ranked seventh. Beating out how many? Like 10,000 other players.
8,770.
8,000 something players. And he also has done. He's
Movies?
he's made a pilot for a dramedy show about his life or based on his life called Just Doug. He's made music videos. He's written articles about politics and race and everything.
I've even made a documentary for...
He even directed a documentary for Radio Korea, and and he's done all kinds of things, and he's joining us again here today. So thank you, Doug, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Doug, it's always good seeing you.
Yeah, thanks.
Wait, but what didn't you do? What haven't you done in life?
What haven't I done? Well, I recently was studying for the LSATs, so because I was thinking about going to law school.
That's right.
So I haven't done that, but recent events kind of made me think, I don't know if I want to go.
Hey, last time you were like, I'm taking the LSAT, right?
Yeah.
It was determination, right?
Yeah.
And then what changed?
I think it was just, I talked to a lot of lawyers, and
They don't like their jobs.
Yeah. No, nobody really, no lawyer I've ever talked to said, I love my job. Yeah. And the primary reason I wanted to go to law school was to learn about the American political system. Because, I think as a budding revolutionary, one of my tenets is kind of like the Sun Tzu idea of, know your enemy better than they know themselves. And so what better way to know the enemy than to know exactly how the U.S. government works?
So the U.S. government is your enemy?
Yeah, I say the U.S. ruling class is my enemy, in my opinion.
The establishment.
Yes, the establishment.
What is
The
the
deep state.
establishment? Yeah, what is the establishment?
I think it's all synonymous, isn't it?
Is it?
one of my, I guess, out there tinfoil hat theories is that...
Hey. There's aliens. America has about 12 crafts, they say.
We can get into that later.
A whistleblower says.
But before that, I would say that the CIA has pretty much controlled the American government since 1968 after the death of RFK. I think that JFK and RFK were both taken out because of Vietnam.
And by the CIA, right?
Yeah. And so, once you take out a president and a potential president, everyone else is kind of on notice. Oh, we better do what the U.S. State Department says, or we're going to be the next people that get got, So that's why I'm thinking,
So you think Trump was aware of this? And
I don't know if Trump was actually aware of this or all the things that were going on when he was elected. He might be more aware, obviously, now. But I think he knew of the corruption in just American politics and business because they're so closely linked, corporations and stuff.
do you think Trump was fighting the deep state or establishment, or what do you think of that? Was he actually doing that?
I think what happened was during that Obama's correspondence dinner.
The one that he roasted Donald Trump
Yes.
on, right? And started this whole
Yes.
talking crap about Trump.
I think Trump was part of that establishment, right? He knew how it worked. He was in the inner circle. He was friends with the Clintons and everyone else.
Yeah.
I think he saw that. He saw the hypocrisy of Obama sitting up there and saying that he was this whatever, and I'm always going to be a president. And he was just kind of like, I'm going to become president, and then I'm going to call everyone out for their hypocrisy. That's what I think actually happened. Obviously, along the way, it was like, hey, if I can make a few dollars along the way, why not? But I think he was really motivated by that, to be honest.
By his ego, I think.
I mean, there was an element of that too.
I think that made him even more driven.
Yeah, of course.
And I think when the reporters and the news media started getting in on it and bashing him all day long, I think he became even more determined.
Yeah.
And it moved, and he was at the right place at the right time. Had the right kind of
I think there were several also miscalculations that the Democratic Party made. I think they were so self-assured of Obama's presidency over the past 8 years that they thought they were going to be probably a shoe-in with Hillary, just whoever they put out there. You could see it from the leaked emails with John Podesta, her campaign manager, about how they wanted Trump to win the Republican nomination.
Because they thought it would be an easy win for them.
Exactly. And I saw this thing from Anonymous later that before the election. This was before they were taken over by the CIA, in my opinion.
I don't doubt you on that.
Yeah.
I agree with you a lot.
So I think this was a couple months before the election in 2016. They came out with a video that basically said that well, we know now that Hillary wanted Donald Trump to be the nomination, and that they thought that the strategy would be to expose all of his, dalliances with women and whatever. But then Trump knew that, and he used his own knowledge of, Bill Clinton's dalliances. And now more information about that is coming out, especially with the Epstein stuff a few years ago. And I feel like, Trump was right about a lot of things, and the Democrats tried to cover all of what he said up, and by kind of like using like ad hominems and like, hey, like Trump is bad guy, Trump did this, Trump did that, but that didn't make anything Trump was saying wrong. Trump was calling them out, but the Democrats were trying to discredit him by insulting him and doing all these things.
Well, their campaign worked for about half the population, I think.
Yes.
Because the left-leaning or the Democrat supporters, they hate Trump,
Yeah.
People that consume mainstream media.
Yeah.
They really hate Trump. And I think I was one of them too, because I was in Korea during this election time was going on.
Yeah.
And I actually supported Hillary Clinton. I didn't know about all the things that were going on. But one of the things is that in Korea, all we get is or all people are focused on is like CNN or the mainstream channels.
Sure.
So that was the whole thing. We thought Trump had no chance in hell.
Yeah.
And then when Trump flipped it, it was like, whoa.
Yeah. So I was pretty apolitical at the time in 2016. I actually had never voted in my entire life until 2020. I guess I grew up kind of like actually Republican leaning. But then in college, I went to Duke University, and Southern white people are not as kind to non-white people.
Really?
As you might imagine.
Really? Going to Duke in this day and age?
Yes.
So you felt you had
that was 20 years ago.
Oh, 20 years ago.
This day and age. I don't know if that makes a huge difference, but
you're right, because I was in Michigan, and that's northern central, right?
Yeah.
And I remember facing a little bit more,
Yeah.
racism.
So then that made me kind of
just really stupid stuff.
Yeah.
You chink,
Yeah, exactly. But then, I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm not even going to care about politics. It's all a show, whatever. So when Trump got elected, or the day of the election, I looked at I'm a gambler as well. So there were these gambling sites that you could bet on whoever wins. And so they had Hillary at 60%. So I was like, oh, there's actually a pretty good chance Trump could take this. And I think like in the aftermath, you could kind of see why, because like Trump said, Hillary didn't campaign in all of those close swing states, and as a result, Trump took them all because he was basically going to the ground level and picking up votes that because of the past 8 years of the Obama presidency after the financial crisis, most of the working class saw that the bankers were bailed out, but they were not, so middle America all saw that and were like, oh, Trump is our guy. He's the one who's actually calling these Democrats out for their hypocrisy. And so that's how I think he was able to manage to win those votes in those swing states. Because a lot of those people actually, the people that voted for Trump, a lot of them voted for Obama. They didn't vote for McCain or whoever Romney. So when you look at the actual voting statistics and the data, they show a different picture than what the Democrats like to portray. And I remember now that in the aftermath, Hillary was a sore loser. She's always a sore loser. She was a sore loser for Obama when she lost the Democratic nomination in 2008.
That's right.
And she was a sore loser now because she blamed the Russian interference, and then everyone
which happened to be BS.
Yeah, exactly. So and now you get all of them on board with the Russian-Ukraine situation because now they think, Russia screwed Hillary. So now I hate Russia. That's how that kind of like works. Where in the Democrats' favor in supporting the war effort against Russia, because now you have all these liberals who have it in their brains that Russia helped Trump, therefore Russia bad. That's the kind of thing that they do. They use their media to implant these kind of ideas so that later on they can take advantage of them.
Okay, so overall, do you think Trump was he was trying to actually, he was motivated by revenge, or he actually wanted to help the people? What do you think?
I think it's a bit of column A, column B. I don't think it's 100% one way or the other. Obviously, there was ego involved. I'm not going to deny that. But he did help in his own way. He tried to help his constituents. He tried to slow down things that would ruin the industries that many middle American working class people would have. And he did improve the lives of some people, mainly his constituents, obviously. Whereas I think, the Democrats promise a lot, but they never really deliver. Even when Biden won, for example, in 2020, he was talking about, all the Democrats were talking about the border camps. They were talking about all these different things like Black Lives Matter. But what happened? Police budgets actually went up after Biden got elected. Those border camps, they stayed border camping. All these policies that they actually criticized Trump for to get elected, they kept in place and even made some of them worse.
So actually then conservatives should actually support Biden.
So that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing establishment neocons who are kind of either supporting Biden or by saying, Trump was crazy or whatever, trying to a little bit of it's like kissing the ring type stuff. But they're also supporting DeSantis now, saying like, we need to support, get behind this guy because this guy serves our interests. I do think that Trump still represents kind of like an anti-establishment figure that the Republicans now don't want. Someone told me that when Trump was elected, all of them got in line, right? Because they wanted to kiss the ring themselves. But like people like Lindsey Graham, it's almost like they flipped 180. Once he was not in office, you see Lindsey Graham now going to the other side and being like, screw Trump.
That's the political game. So I mean, that's what they're playing. They probably think that Trump's never going to be able to make it back.
Right.
And the campaign against him to not let him come back, it's massive in my opinion.
Yeah, they arrested him, they indicted him, and I don't know how that's going to shake out.
Do you think that'll help him in the make his supporters even more
if
gung-ho?
He manages to get out of it and it doesn't affect him legally in terms of being able to run for office? I think it'll help him.
But they're going to keep appealing it, or it's going to be pushed back. I mean,
right. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like that's why I'm saying I don't know what's going to happen legally. I'm not an expert.
A lot of the conservative media is reporting that this is propelling Trump to even higher levels than ever before, and a lot of the liberal media is saying, hey, conservative media is saying that. A lot of liberal media is saying that it's actually dropped.
Liberal media is saying what's dropped?
His approval rating.
No, that's nonsense.
I mean, that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
It's dropping among the liberal base, maybe. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but those people are never going to vote for Trump anyway. No. So it's like, okay.
Hey, let me just ask you, what did you think about the election in the last election, 2020?
Yeah.
And what did you think? Did you think that there was some strange things in there? There were reports of strange occurrences of, where certain local election laws where there has to be a representative.
I don't think there was any strange stuff about that per se, the election process, but everything running up to it in the past year, there was a lot of
Hunter Biden, stuff. That kind of stuff?
Hunter Biden, but suppression of all that stuff by Twitter and Facebook in the media of anything negative. It's almost as if the Hillary email leak, they saw that and they almost took it too far to protect Biden, you know? They were like, oh, now that we messed up with that, we have to go like the extra distance to cover up anything Biden did. But even before that, I'm talking about like the primaries. I'm talking about, you know, maybe possibly, you know, all these lab leak theories of COVID-19. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Trump
let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. All right. Well, let's get into the lab leak thing. But under Trump, we saw, we saw a rise in what? Anti-Asian hate, right?
Was it really because Kung flu?
Was it because of Trump? What do you think?
I don't think it was because of Trump. I think anti-Asian hate has already existed, you know, since the LA riots, and really even before that.
Okay, I mean, you could go back to what, the 1800s then, right?
No, I would say that Democrat-led anti-Asian hate started in 1968, after the death of Martin Luther King. Do you want me to go into that?
You're talking about Vietnam?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was no anti-Asian hate by the
There was, but I'm saying that this was like Democrat-led.
Okay, Democrat-led.
Yeah. Where, you know, I don't know if many viewers know this, but, you know, the civil rights movement was during the 1960s, especially during LBJ's presidency when he, I think the civil rights bill was in 1964. That was a very significant bill. And he was working with black liberals in order to get all these things passed, even including Martin Luther King. And the idea, I think, was in the same year. This was like the election year for 1964, right? This was because he took over after JFK was assassinated, I think, in 1963.
Right.
So then, you know, in a wanting to get reelected, right? He does that, the civil rights bill, he continues JFK's stuff. But what he also does is he knows that like the Democratic base at the time was the southern states. So he knows he's going to lose that support. Mm-hmm. So he needs to get more support from other people. So who's he going to go to? The African Americans, right? To continue that civil rights stuff. But in addition to that, there was a false flag called the Gulf of Tonkin, which gave him the pretext to escalate the situation in Vietnam to massive bombing campaigns and all this other stuff. So, you know, during war, the American public tends to vote for the, you know, incumbent president because they want the same president to remain while there's a war going on. So I think that he used both of those kind of things in tandem to get the presidency in 1964. And then later on, you know, to keep the war effort going, you know, they needed bodies, right? It became a very unpopular war after a while because a lot of American bodies were being killed, right? Or American boys, right? So he needed more soldiers. So he kind of like reached out to the African American liberal community saying, hey, if you support the war in Vietnam, we will support these civil rights bills. We'll push them through. We'll get them going.
The black community was against the war in Vietnam at that time. I know there were multiple factions. You know, like obviously the Malcolm X kind of you know, the black nationalist factions opposed the war in Vietnam, like people like Muhammad Ali and stuff like that. Yeah. But the black liberal factions, they supported the war in Vietnam because does that include MLK?
So he was with the black liberals at the time, right? And he was working with LBJ to get these bills passed. But by 1967, you know, he saw all these bombing campaigns in Vietnam and he was like, what's going on? You know, like we have all these money for bombs, but we don't have money for the homeless here. We don't have money for anything here. Like what's going on? So in 1967, he makes a speech in April 4th, I believe, speaking out against Vietnam, saying, hey, we can't support this. This is not like something this is not something I signed up for. This is, you know, like, I think.
Is that the speech he said where America is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world?
He might have.
It's like a year before he was killed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a year before the day he was assassinated,
that's
which,
the one,
you know, tinfoil hat on.
Exactly a year?
Exactly
365 days?
Exactly 1 year.
Yeah, then that's that speech.
So then after that speech, you know what happened? LBJ said, what is this preacher N-word doing to me? Like we gave him the Civil Rights Bill, we gave him the Fair Labor Bill, and all this other bills that he's and from that moment on, he was banished from the White House. He was never to go in there. All the NAACP and all the black liberal publications around the country denounced King's they said it should be separate issues. They have nothing to do with each other. The civil rights movement has nothing to do with each other. His approval rating with the American public dropped to the single digits, like 6% or 7% approval rating, because like everyone was like rah Vietnam, right? Like rah war effort. And even in the African American community, people don't know this, but his approval rating in the African American community dropped to 25%. And then the day he was killed, actually, he was not only he was not only fighting for black rights, he was fighting for fair stuff for all poor people, like all homeless people. I think he was he in DC during the time? He was doing some sort of rally for.
At that time, would these be considered sort of a radical kind of policy? To set aside all that money, to help everyone like that. I mean, social welfare, was that like a big thing back then? I don't think it was it?
Yeah, it was not a big thing. I think that he was introducing these kind of like more socialist leaning ideas, and that's what I think he was actually taken out for. I don't think he was taken out for, I think if he had towed the line with Vietnam, I think he wouldn't have been killed.
Well, he did publicly speak out against it. I heard that speech, and
yeah,
the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government.
Yeah,
and my understanding was after that speech, suddenly he became like an enemy of the people, and he was killed 1 year later.
Yeah, and Malcolm X.
Malcolm X was, I think, 5 years prior to that, right?
Right, but he was killed in 1965 in February, but what got the American government on him was when JFK died. In 1963, he said, when he was asked for his opinion on it, he said, "Well, the chickens have come home to roost," basically implying that American imperialism came back to bite
right,
people in
right, and then
even the Nation of Islam, his group disowned him for that.
Yeah, I think he was. They told him to not, because I read his autobiography.
They gave him a gag. They gave him a gag.
They told
order.
him not to say anything, and he said that, and then he kind of, they.
He was killed, right?
He went to Mecca for a year.
He went to Mecca, then he started his own group.
And then he came back, and then he was killed.
And this is after he came back from Mecca. Apparently, like there's reports saying that he'd become less radicalized, or he was
he was less about black nationalism and more about kind of like how do we get along?
He said he would work with anyone who wants to end the miserable condition in this country.
Yeah, but before his attitude was like,
So after that, after he came back, I think one of the last things he did before he was killed was he joined Martin Luther King in Selma for the voting stuff. The black liberals were scared, actually. They were like, oh, he's going to cause violence. He's going to mess everything up. But he tells Coretta Scott King, I'm not here to screw with anything your husband is doing. I'm here to say, hey, if you don't sign the stuff with your husband, there's door B behind it, to kind of like give the kind of like sense that, hey, there's option A and there's option B.
I think what I heard was he said something along the lines of, people like me make it easier for people to accept people like your husband, MLK. Something.
I don't know if he said that, but that
Right.
wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was, I think, the first and last time they ever met in person.
Okay. Great.
Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Malcolm X, a radical, revolutionary, whatever.
Yeah.
He was
actually the first time he was on the FBI's radar was in 1950. He was in jail, and he declared himself a communist, and he sent a letter to President Truman saying, "I protest the Korean War. This is not right." And that's the first time he came on the FBI's radar.
That was like
radar.
the peak of this whole like communist is evil and
that was
kind of campaign
after World War II, right?
Yeah.
The Cold War and McCarthyism, and Malcolm X was targeted. Yeah. Anyway, so the anti-Asian stuff did the
Right. So then, after MLK's death, they
Right.
rewrote his history. Even the black liberals, they kind of said, "Oh, he was just a nice guy who said kumbaya, everyone get together." And
he had a dream, right?
yeah, he had a dream, like all these nice things after he's dead, right? But juxtaposed with that was the, black people in the military idea was that, during the time of 1960s, 1950s, there weren't very many like good economic opportunities for black people. So a lot of, black liberals sold it to them saying like, hey, this is your way to prove your
Go
worth
die
to
for
this-
your country.
Well, in a way, yeah. It's
And they
like,
threw him on the front lines.
this is how, you pay your country back, and you kind of get paid handsomely compared to whatever else you can do here. And so it kind of like, I don't know. My theory is that it was almost like they were hiring mercenaries to kill Asian people. And when you have that implanted, hey, it's good, we're doing good for this country by, going to Vietnam and whatever, doing, going to war. This is for America, and this is how I gain acceptance in America. That kind of like implicitly, almost like subliminally says, these Asian people are, enemies to the state. And so, they're not worth compassion. Actually, they're worth less compassion than actually white people, because like they're attacking America now. And I think that, we saw the culmination of what happened in the LA riots with that. I think because of decades of this kind of programming, it became easier for black people to kind of accept that, oh, white people, they're not all that bad. White liberals, they're kind of on our side. LBJ gave all these things, but these Asian people, they come into our places, they take all of our, they exploit our communities
They
and
take
whatever.
our money.
Exactly. So
there's a lot
it
of
kind of
Korean
like
businesses.
justifies this rhetoric of like anti-Asian hate.
So would you say then that the white community uses Asians as sort of a shield?
Yeah, I would
Or a diversion.
I would put it almost like a Indiana Jones type thing where where they switch where he switches the treasure with the bag of whatever.
Diversion.
Yeah. It's like, hey guys, we're not your enemy. See, we're giving you all these things, but it's these Asian people. Look, they're trying to fight affirmative action. What's going on with that, guys? Oh, don't look at legacy admissions though. Don't look at anything we're doing.
See, that's such BS. Dude. I hate that.
That's
dude.
kind of like what I see going on with the white liberals, with the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party is trying to use their white guilt and put it on the Asian American community so that black people target Asian people.
You know what I don't get? Dude, can you imagine if they did affirmative action the other way around? There's not enough Asians in the NBA, so we have to put a curve on it.
I mean, like that's
Can
what
you
happened.
imagine
That actually
what would happen?
happened. That actually happened.
What they put Asians?
No, but the reaction you're talking about
No.
is what happened with Jeremy Lin.
Oh.
He succeeded, right? In
But
Knicks.
he wasn't
No,
graded
hold
on a curve
hold
though.
on. Right? No, I'm agreeing with you here.
Mm-hmm.
He like succeeded in the Knicks. After he was starting point guard, he started winning. And the reason he was like kind of ousted out was kind of like the jealousy of the fellow Knicks players, especially Carmelo Anthony. J.R. Smith saying something like, "Oh, he doesn't deserve that contract from the Rockets," or like nobody ever talks about any other NBA players' money, right? That's just like a thing nobody does, right? Because like you don't want your contract to be disputed or whatever. But that was like, why is somebody else talking about another person's money? Because he's Asian. Because that was like discrimination in my opinion.
Do you think Asians are? I think Asians are just kind of like a punching bag.
Yeah.
People see like.
I mean, whenever we see like what I've seen is over the last few years, we saw the increase in anti-Asian hate. And a lot of times it seems that the videos that we see is black people attacking Asians.
And old Asians.
Yeah, including old Asians.
Like super old Asians.
Yeah.
Including especially a lot of old Asians, just beaten, shot, whatever. And whenever this happens, though, there's outrage, but then there's always a few voices, especially on social media, including from like Asian American thought leaders or whatever, professors and whatnot, saying that, this is a tragedy, but Asians have to recognize our own anti-blackness. And it just kind of ends the conversation right there. Like, what do you make of that?
I've never been anti-black.
So I think there's a difference between interpersonal anti-blackness and structural anti-blackness, right? I think like, yeah, I think that sure, some Asian people can be racist towards black people. I'm not saying that's impossible. But at the same token, there are plenty of black people who are anti-Asian racist as well. You know, like growing up as an Asian person, you know, there are black people who call you, you know, slurs and stuff like that. It's not like black people are extending their hands of friendship all the time to Asian people.
You know, I own a restaurant in Inglewood, and I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all, but there is a small percentage of people who are very racist.
Yeah.
Against Asians. And they're very unhappy about us taking their money.
Yeah.
Right. So why? Okay. So that's the thing is like, why do we hear so much about anti-blackness in the Asian community? But based on everything you see, you would think, why is there no discussion about perhaps anti-Asianness within the black community?
Because that's how they don't
black
get paid.
people get a pass.
If they say those kinds of things, they're gonna be fired.
Who's they? You mean
the academics you're talking about, the professors, even the politicians, the professors, the politicians, the journalists. Once they say those kind of things, they're out of a job because they all have to toe the liberal establishment line.
So all these Asian American leaders all have to toe that line.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the positions of power that they were in to begin with.
Okay, so they sell out their own community for their own personal gain.
Yep.
Yeah, that CNN article about Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
There was an article written by CNN. It was about how Little Mermaid is suffering or is not doing good in Asian markets.
In China and South Korea
because of
racism.
Racist backlash. This is how they wrote it. Racist backlash from South Korea and also China.
I saw that article was written by 2 Asian women.
No, it was 3.
Oh, was it 3?
Yeah, it was 3. And they're all Asian.
Yeah.
Because they make a lot of money throwing the rest of their community on the bus. It's the same thing with black liberals, in my opinion, since the 1960s. Malcolm X called them out. He called them all Uncle Toms because he saw how they were, using the money that the Democrats were giving them and using it for their own benefit. And we see that with Black Lives Matter even. Even the black community has
buying
been
$1 million houses.
In the past few years, they've been calling out the BLM leaders. They're doing the same thing as the NAACP back then by saying, "Hey, we're on your side. We're causing visibility. We're creating diversity."
No, they're exploiting it. That's what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're making money off of it.
Exactly. So I think that's what these Asian journalists are doing. They're saying, "Oh yeah, our anti-blackness. Yeah, that's because everyone already accepts that and believes that." They're just like, putting out stuff that plays to everyone's confirmation biases, and so they can sell more papers. They can sell more,
the biggest reason like Asian countries might get that kind of perception or misunderstanding. The fact is that they're homogenous countries. They're not used to having foreigners,
right?
Get along. Even like
they don't even like, a lot of them don't even like white people.
Yeah,
it's not like
and the perception that they get is from news media and Hollywood.
Right. Exactly.
So
that's the other angle.
They're just as guilty because they're spreading it.
When they talk about like South Korea, for example, during the 50s and the 60s, South Korea was a very poor, impoverished third world country. U.S. military was all around everywhere. And where did they get their entertainment? It was all American entertainment that they got. And what was American entertainment at that time like towards black people? It wasn't very kind.
No.
It wasn't very progressive back then.
No,
so
check out the movies from the 80s and 90s and 2000s or something like that. Every time there's like a criminal coming out, they're black.
Exactly. So when South Korean people watch this over and over again,
you're thinking,
of course they're going to be anti.
Yeah.
It's like, how could they almost not be anti-black when this is the only thing that they see? There's like the black population in South Korea is probably like 0.001%. Right?
Sorry, Doug, I wouldn't even say anti-black. I would just say Hollywood made them scared.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like anything that kind of like plays into stereotypes and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's just kind of, I feel like, especially the white liberal media, they present the surface level of what's going on, but they omit everything that happened before that to make it.
That's
just to get a reaction from the black community, saying like, "Hey, these Korean people, they're actually racist against you."
Right.
When in actuality, when you look at all the evidence, for example, you see that all these African countries didn't show up for Little Mermaid either. So are Africans anti-black? And the story of the Little Mermaid is crazy. You have this black mermaid who wants to leave her, people to get with the white man. So what is that story really even saying?
Right.
Like, is it racist?
That's Disney's twist.
It's almost racist if you like the Little Mermaid, in my opinion.
Yeah. Anyhow,
and other black, like I hear Black Panther and other things did well there, so that's not the reason.
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's,
Black Panther. I actually did a lot of research on this. And the top movies in China, for example, were like Fast and Furious.
Yeah, which is like the most like inclusive film.
And Avengers, which has like all the Avengers who are multicultural.
Right. So then if CNN or liberal media, whatever, is putting that out, then they want to portray Asians in a negative way.
Sure. Yeah.
So they're anti-Asian, but then they're also misleading the black community.
Yeah.
So they're anti-black too, then, right?
Right. Because
so then what are they? What are they pro?
They're pro-money.
Pro-white people.
Pro-white.
They're pro-white.
So liberals are actually white supremacists.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting.
All right. That is very interesting. We have to come back in just a little bit. We'll check out this PSA and we'll be back with more on Culture Shock.
여보세요.
아빠, 나 큰일 났어.
큰일 났다. 이게 무슨 소리야?
어플로 어떤 남자를 만났는데 이상한 데로 끌려왔어.
아니 어플로 무슨 남자를 그게 무슨 소리야 그게 도대체?
어딘지 모르겠어. 지하실 같은 곳으로 끌려왔어. 돈 안 주면 아빠 다시 못 볼 거라고.
미치겠네. 아이 지금 무슨 말도 안 되는 소리야.
돈만 보내면 당신의 딸은 무사합니다.
당신 누구야?
제발 살려주세요.
당신 뭐야?
어떡해.
잠시만요. 아니 뭐 어떻게 해야 되는지 알려주세요.
메시지로 뱅크 어카운트 넘버 보낼 테니까 거기로 5만 불 보내세요. 허튼 짓 할 생각하지 마세요. 딱 3분 드립니다.
알겠어요. 제가 바로 여보세요? 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 저기요. 아무 메시지가 안 왔어요.
지금 당장 캐시 5만 불 준비하고 내가 다시 전화할 때까지 기다리세요.
네. 지금 당장 준비할게요. 네. 내 딸 목소리 한 번만 들려주세요.
아빠, 난 진짜 너무 무서워. 빨리 와.
너 걱정 말고 가만히 있어. 아빠가 할 거니까 울지 말고. 알았지?
아빠 어디 가?
아빠.
아빠?
엄마. 나 큰일 났어.
Good evening, and we're back with Culture Shock. I'm Michael Kim, your host tonight, filling in for Michael Wan. Sorry, just the camera caught me like adjusting my position, but anyway, yeah, and we're here with Young Kim, who's your regular host. He's hosting, and guest is Doug Kim for his third appearance. Communist Doug, poker player Doug.
I just realized we're all
actor
Kims
Doug.
here.
Oh, it's like we're the
What
the
Kim
Kims,
are you?
yeah.
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, really? I'm Kim
Oh,
Hey
wow.
Kim. What Kim are you?
Chungju Kim. There's only a
Chungju?
few thousand of us.
Chungju Kimbap. It's
Sure.
really good.
I don't know. My great grandfather was all the way up north.
Oh, he's North Korean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So my
father's
grandfather-
side, they
yeah, my
they
father's- yeah.
they fled North Korea
Yeah.
during the war, and they fled on these boats, these huge like cargo boats, right? And they have one of those boats in Long Beach.
My grandfather, from my dad's side, he already left in 1945 because he kind of saw where the winds were blowing. And he was like to his grandfather, or his father, who was my great grandfather.
Oh, he
was
just
like,
decided to move south.
Yeah, he was like, "Yo, we got to get the f out of here because
The UN is going to split us up and
Yeah.
draw a line between us. And
well, they were also landowners, so."
oh,
okay.
oh,
But my great grandfather at the time, apparently, what he said was like, this is the only life I've known. I'm too old to start over. So if they get me, they get me.
Right. Okay. Well, before the break, we said, what did we say? We said that the media is white supremacist, right?
yeah. So the media is white,
Liberal-
liberal
liberal-
media,
the
the
liberal.
liberal media, which is mainstream.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, a lot of news media is
So
liberal.
Liberal news media is white supremacist, anti-Asian, anti-black, anti-everything, but white supremacist.
But they do it in a very subtle way. They know how to manipulate.
Right.
They what they do is that they elevate a chosen class of ethnic people in each ethnic group, like black liberals, Asian liberals, whatever, and they have them write articles or make TV shows or do all these things to tell the rest of the community, hey, these are our friends, when they're actually not.
You know, a lot of people might believe you can't do this in this day and age, right? But this kind of stuff has been going on for years, for forever, since like the beginning of press and everything, right?
I
Right,
think
sure.
since the beginning of press, but I think what actually put it into hyperdrive was the invention of the television. That kind of like,
Now the invention of the internet.
yeah, and that's even more so. Like we're seeing our screens 24/7, right?
Right. But okay. So getting back to that though, a lot of Asian or our audience, which is Korean, watching this might be like, okay, screw the media, mainstream media, liberal media, and be like, okay, I'm gonna watch conservative media. What do you think of that? Should they go to conservative media?
My thought is more, I mean, like I do like a lot of conservative media a lot more than liberal media. I do think like for example,
even though you're a communist, hardcore leftist, you like conservative media more than liberal media.
Yeah, I would say I enjoy conservative anti-establishment media. Like someone like Tucker Carlson, for example.
Okay.
Who
Oh,
has been-
he's doing great.
Alex Jones, even maybe.
Alex Jones is a
Jones
little
went
out
a little
there.
far.
But I do. What I do is like I don't take everyone at their word.
What about Epoch Times? A lot of Koreans
No.
love Epoch Times.
Epoch Times is controlled by this cult, this Chinese cult called Falun Gong.
Falun Gong, right?
Yeah.
That's not where they get all those organs from. Like in China, apparently you could
that's
get like
all-
10 hearts in one day or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's all like propaganda.
Is it really propaganda?
Those are so what they are Chinese dissidents who hate the CPC.
Uh-huh.
And what they do is they create all these crazy stories, but they put like white faces on there. They're smart enough to put white faces on the top.
Well, Larry Elder works for them, right?
I don't know exactly their
He works for them.
He buys
Yeah.
columns for them.
right, and it's just kind of they probably get a lot of funding from anti-China kind of places. And
So Koreans should not go to Epoch Times for information.
I would say Koreans should go to, so what I do personally is I go to everything. I read everything I can. And I would say the thing not to do is ever stick to one source.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, you should see the Epoch Times or not see the Epoch Times. I'm actually kind of like, hey, like if the Epoch Times is saying something, I want to know what they're saying. Right. But I don't read media and immediately believe everything they're saying. I see, what are they trying to say here? What is the context behind what they're trying to say here? What are the actual facts? Yeah, and what's the motive? What are they trying to get me to believe? I'm probably more advantaged in this regard than most people, just because I've lived in Hollywood, I've worked in Hollywood for so long. I know kind of like how the propaganda machine works. it's difficult for the average person because the average person is working 24 hours, like they have a full-time job.
He was saying something like that too. I was like, man, how do you know all this information? How do you know all this stuff, right? He's like, going, the average people has to work,
Yeah, exactly.
I have privilege. I didn't have to work as hard as everyone.
One of the big things in, for example, Nazi Germany was the big lie, right? Say something over and over again, repeat it, even though it might sound outlandish at first. If you keep repeating it, they'll start to believe it because I think it was either Goebbels or Hitler who said something like, they will be so exhausted by the time like they hit like over and over again. They'll be like, okay, fine, I believe it. And so it's the same kind of thing when you're working 9 to 5 and you're laying down at work.
Russia.
You just like turn on the TV.
China.
Yeah, you just want to see something entertaining or whatever. You're not even realizing entertainment as well as propaganda. Everything like you see in the media is propaganda. They're trying to get you to believe or think or feel something.
No, I worked for a propaganda station.
Right. So then like when you're just like, I just need to relax. Let me just watch this TV show. It's like kind of like telling you what to think. And you're at your most vulnerable because you're just like kind of trying to relax. You're trying to unwind. You're trying to not even think about, work or any of the problems that you have or any of the problems that are happening abroad, right?
So do you think movies like Top Gun or, other war films or military films, do you consider that propaganda?
Yes. They are all propaganda, even Marvel films.
How about American Sniper?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know this, but when Top Gun came out, the U.S. military was
like Libya and all that stuff was going on over there, right?
I'm not sure what was happening during
2011.
Oh, sorry.
I'm talking about 1986, the original Top Gun.
Yeah.
This was
the
11
original
years
Top Gun.
after Vietnam. So after 75, the fall of Saigon, the U.S. Army to the American public was at its lowest kind of like popularity. Everyone was like, F this war, like even the people coming back and like, what do we do here? It was a very unpopular situation for the U.S. military. And so when Top Gun came out, they made a few changes to the story saying like, hey, it was actually Maverick's dad who was in Vietnam. Now we got this like top flight, like slick, sleek hero in the U.S. Navy. It's not the Army anymore. It's the U.S. Navy. And it's like this cool airplane stuff. And they use like U.S. military equipment. And so when it came out, it actually did very well because, Tom Cruise and all this stuff is very charismatic. And what the U.S. military did was like, oh, shoot, we should put recruitment booths right in front.
Of the theaters?
Yeah. So what happened, and even what happened with the sequel, they did this for the sequel too. So they put recruitment out of the theaters because this was back when, you didn't make all of your money up front, like with the opening weekend. Mm-hmm. It was like a long period of time if a movie was doing well.
Yeah.
So they saw their recruitment numbers for the U.S. Navy go up 500%.
Wow.
And so ever since then, the DoD saw that and said, Hollywood, if you want to use our airplanes, our equipment in your movies, we have final approval over any script that you write. So even like all the Marvel films you see, all the, DC film, all the superhero films with any military equipment in it, that has final DoD approval.
Wow. I had no idea. We were talking about what do you do? You asked the question, what do you do? I mean, where do you go for trusted news when so many things are propaganda and so many news agencies they're trying to work for a motive, they're trying to do something, they're trying to get you to believe in something, right?
Yeah, I would say, try to pick things from opposite
the thing is, I'm
sides.
saying I don't believe anything anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe anything. I can't believe Fox. I just listen to it and I take it for what it is, and I take notes.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to believe anything. What is a reliable? How do you know your source is reliable?
I mean, so
how do you know anything's reliable?
I troll Twitter all the time, so I'm getting sources from everywhere. I'm looking at everything, what everyone is saying, what their motives are. And it takes a long time. I've got a lot of time to do this. The average person doesn't have the time that I have to kind of like pick out and analyze. So it's difficult. That's how the American propaganda machine works. They criticize China and all these other places for censorship and saying, oh, they don't have free speech. But I think the way the American propaganda machine works is they throw so much crap at in every single direction. You get the effect that you're saying. You don't know what to believe.
Or just suppress what's real,
right.
on
feed.
feed.
For me, I would say, hey, let's go back to the historical source. What did they say 20 years ago? What did they say 30 years ago? What did they say 40 years ago? And how has their narrative shifted over time? Are they saying different things that they were 40 years ago? And why is that? Or are they saying the same thing? And I feel like I tend to believe the sources that are more consistent with their narrative, I don't know if I believe them, but I tend to kind of like look at them more closely, because the people who are like wishy-washy with the tide turns, I feel like those are probably more manipulated by corporate interests and the interests of the bourgeoisie.
So consistency is what you're looking for.
Yeah. So like I try to look back. What did they say like last year? What did they say 5 years ago? What did they say 10 years ago? And I also try to read as much of history from back then. A lot of the stuff that I know about Korea and the stuff that I believe about Korea comes from reading about the history. Like I read a lot of stuff about the Korean War. I read a lot of stuff about all that stuff that was happening in the 1950s. And I think the reason it's so easy to believe in propaganda for Koreans and Korean Americans is because all that stuff we were not given access to. I don't know if you know this, but there was a national security law in 1947, I believe, in South Korea, or 1948, where they basically said you cannot read anything from Marx, Lenin,
anything
or Kim Il-sung.
communist related, right?
Yeah. They lifted that ban in 1991 after the fall of the Soviet Union. They said Marx and Lenin stuff is okay. You can read that stuff now, but you still can't read anything from Kim Il-sung. You can't say anything positive about whatever. So when you have that sort of censorship, a lot of the reason we believe the things that we do is not only did they, censor that stuff, they also killed a lot of people who, were pro North Korea in South Korea at the time. So when you kill all your opposition and you kill everyone that's saying, stuff that's positive about it, yeah, that they control what you think. They control what you believe.
Well, I think during those times, there was a lot of spying activities going on, also espionage and such from North Korea.
Sure.
And this was at a time of heightened, this was like, I think, they were having curfews and they were having bomb drills and stuff like that. So
right. So then like 40 years later, after they lift the ban in 91 or whatever, who's going to read Marx now? Who's going to read Lenin now? They've already done the work of like, who's going to like go to like these books and read all this stuff when they've already kind of like quote unquote won? Well,
see, a lot of those communist ideologies, I see the logic in it, and I see how it would be quote unquote serve all people, right? That's kind of like what it's meant for. But by practice, we don't know of any. We're not taught about anything like that of a country that's working. But I understand like Cuba and some countries it does work well.
Why do you think
right?
you're not taught about that?
Yeah, well, so I understand where that comes from. But most of Korea and most of America, especially in Korea, they've been brainwashed. They've been like really educated to hate, the communist idea, the communist country.
Oh yeah,
North,
no, I know. I have Korean parents.
Yeah.
They
and they're
grew
from
up in
North
that.
Korea though.
No.
So your grandparents, right?
Yeah, both my grandparents on my mom's side and one grandparent on my dad's side were from Seoul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then so I have one grandparent from the north.
Yeah, because I have like the
All the way
grandparents
up
from
north.
like I had the grandparents from North Korea, and
Yeah.
they always spoke badly.
Like for
About
example, my
North Korea.
grandfather, that was from like it's like pretty much near the border, like all the way north. He actually worked for Kim Gu for his assassination. He actually
That's pretty gangster, dude.
he actually told my dad that he believes that Sigmund Rhee took him out. But then he
Are we
never-
gonna get shot for this? Are we like bearing witness to something that we shouldn't know?
I think we're good. Yeah.
But he never worked in politics after that because he was scared. That's intimidation, in my opinion. That's like that's the same thing I was talking about in 1968 when RFK was taken out. Everyone gets the message, right? Like you support communism, you're not going to be around much longer.
He was taken out just half a mile from here, I think.
Oh yeah, Bobby.
Hey,
Kennedy.
these things don't happen too much anymore. You see a lot of like school shootings, and you don't see anyone going after politicians anymore.
Yeah, because that was the Cold War, and it gives you kind of like who has the motivation to actually go after U.S. senator or president.
I mean, there's still political assassinations abroad, right? Trump took out the Iranian general. We took
Soleimani.
out, yeah.
Well, that wasn't an assassination. That was a military like action.
We took out Gaddafi. We took out
Osama bin Laden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
but you know what? I saw the Taliban.
I don't even know if we took him out. There was no body. There was no.
Apparently,
That's kind of, they just threw him out to sea, huh?
Yeah,
they
said-
shot him and threw him out.
Yeah.
Didn't print anything.
apparently the Taliban has a Twitter account, and they said
Osama
that-
is alive.
No, they said he died back in either 01 or 03.
Oh.
Yeah, they said
Possible.
Yeah.
All right, moon landing, real or fake?
I actually watched a documentary on this. I would have to say, if gun to my head, I would say it's real, but I still have my suspicions. And the reason I say gun to my head is because the main motive to fake the moon landing was that they were in a space race with the Soviets, right?
Yeah, when the Cold War.
If it was actually fake, the Soviets probably would have called it out by now. But on the fake side, I would say maybe the Soviets felt that they needed, 100% proof, and they didn't have it. So that leads me to the lean towards it's real, but I'm more like 51-49 on that.
51. That's
real.
pretty close, though, dude.
Yeah,
51,
just because of
49?
that Soviet thing.
9/11.
I think. Wait, are we going through all?
Was
the
it? Was
conspiracy
no? I'm
theories?
just saying 9/11 seems to be like the thing that I remember the most because I saw it live.
I mean,
everything,
9/11,
and then everyone signed the Patriot Act after that. They went to Guantanamo. They went.
Yeah,
here
so
and there.
9/11, I think it is possible that it was a CIA psyop, and Osama bin Laden was on the CIA payroll.
He was in the 80s, wasn't he?
He was.
Right.
Well, like, actually, all the Bin Ladens they have some kind of a business
like,
dealing with the Carlyle Group.
The
too,
idea
with the old
would be
stuff.
that the CIA wanted to increase the powers of the military and the American government, and to do that, you take out a thing, you give them a pretext for war, and you pass things like the Patriot Act. You give them total control of like the PRISM stuff that Edward Snowden was talking about, oh, we can't, because that was the CIA's reaction, like, oh, we were caught off guard with this, we can't ever let this happen again. So they built this basically they built the Eye of Sauron, the digital version of the Eye of Sauron, to spy on everyone and violate every American's Fourth Amendment rights.
Right. Edward Snowden said that at some point, like they were able to just go into people's webcams, and he would just be watching people in their homes, like a father with his baby, and just
Because
we could
you
do
see,
that.
I think Mark Zuckerberg, he was one of the first people to kind of popularize putting tape over your.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah. I should probably do that, but I
should
don't.
do that.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
Especially when I change in front of the computer.
You especially should do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta wrap up pretty soon.
No,
Oh.
we still got 2 minutes.
What do you want to talk about? That's,
Well, we can't really talk about much now.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's get personal. How's everything with you?
so everything's okay. I'm going to New York actually on the 23rd.
What are you doing there?
Dad's birthday is happening.
Oh,
next
your
week.
parents are in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
I'm-
actually asking me more and more about Ukraine, Russia.
Oh,
they
okay.
like I said before.
Now they're saying it's weird.
Yeah, before they were saying, I'm crazy about all my support of North Korea and all that stuff. Now they're like, hey, Doug, what's going on in Ukraine? What's actually going on? And they're starting to look into stuff like Ukraine's past, supporting the Nazis and Stepan Bandera. And they're
And your parents are conservative.
no, actually, well, they can't vote because they're not citizens. They're a green card. But my mom is actually, she didn't support Trump because he was too vulgar and inappropriate.
That's the main reason people don't like him.
Yeah. My dad's kind of more anti-political or more apolitical rather. But yeah, my mom is more kind of what is the most Christian thing? What is the most Protestant Christian
I
thing?
see.
Republican.
Okay. Cool.
Well, in this case, she thought Biden was more appropriate.
No.
I don't know.
Doug, thanks again for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
We always have. I didn't know where it was gonna bounce, but we always have a good time talking with you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll see you again next time, and next time we'll talk about video games or
Yeah.
get more into North
I
Korea.
am also going to Vegas a couple weeks
Are
from
you
now.
playing poker?
I'm playing the World Series.
Cool.
So we'll see.
Awesome.
I'll see how that goes.
Good luck. Hope you make a lot of money.
Thank you.
Hey, you gotta teach me poker, dude. We gotta play together
yeah,
or something.
I mean, sometime.
All right, thanks, Doug.
All right. Thanks. And,
Thanks.
that was it for Culture Shock, and we'll be back next time.
All right. See you tomorrow.